All right, hello everyone. This is Crota coming at you, giving you my very first in-depth Hex game. This is going to be the very first round of the limited 2015 Invitational Qualifier back during the very first week. This game was actually part of a sealed deck tournament, so we'll get more into that. However, for my very first cast, I won't be doing this alone. I will be casting alongside virtually Nicosharp. Nicosharp, why don't you say hi?
Hi everyone, this is Nicosharp.
All right, so for those of you guys who are not very familiar with Hex or with sealed deck tournaments, we're going to be giving you some in-depth sight and just some of the basic strategies that go into this really complex trading card game. For those of you guys who haven't seen it, you guys are going to see some new things. You guys are going to see some things that can only happen in the digital realm. And you're going to see also a lot more strategy just because of the basic timing elements that are different in this game. And Nico, anything to add?
No, it's Hex is a great game, and those of you that are familiar with other card games, TCGs in particular, tabletop TCGs, will see some similarities. But for the most part, Hex is very unique, and you'll take away some aspects of this game if you're a newcomer to Hex that you may enjoy and see that vary from other games.
Yeah, like some of the elements different from tabletop games. I remembered actually testing this game back with Colin years and years ago as a tabletop game, and the entire board was just covered with dice. Every time something random happened, I think there was a concubine bunny, I forget the name, but it would generate a non-unique shin hair, and we had to like roll a dice and then take a look at a sheet of paper and then like write down on a card and then put it onto the field. And this was happening, and I think there was over like 27 dice on the field, and we're like, I can't keep track of everything. So for those of you guys who like a little bit of random number generator, that element is there, and it can generate cards out of thin air. So that's some of the things that can only happen in a realm like this. But we'll go ahead and get into that once the gameplay does get started. I wanted to actually talk about the limited invitational qualifier and what this particular game would be leading up to. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Hex TCG is still in its beta phase, but they are doing a $100,000 tournament coming up this February 20th and 21st. Already I believe half of the players have already qualified, players from around the world, a lot of players from Europe. I believe there's only one American in there right now. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Us Americans just not representing, making Cryptozoic and Hex Entertainment fly more people out from Europe. I don't know how I feel about that. How do you feel?
Oh, it's great that we have a strong player group from Europe, and it's great that this game's already taking off in many different countries. But yes, I would also like to see more players from the U.S. make it in.
Yeah, also, Hex Entertainment has mentioned that they would be able to go ahead and come down to the event on the 20th and 21st. I know that, well, you're in the same time zone as me, so it means that it's not too big of a hop, skip, and a jump for you. Any thoughts on you making the trip down here?
Yeah, I'd really be interested in casting. I haven't casted any live events before, and I've done just a few things my own, but I could definitely make the trip down. I'm just in Northern California, so it's not too far on my way to make it there and support the event. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it definitely is. So let's go ahead and move on to, well, at least talk about what format this particular event is and this particular best of three series that we will be casting. For those of you guys who don't know, this is not a constructed event. This was actually a sealed event, which means you open 6 packs of cards, and what you see is what you get. Any ideas or anything you want to share about a limited sealed deck event? A lot of people say, hey, it all comes down to chance. And there's really not that much strategy to it. What do you have to say about that?
Well, so sealed is you do get 90 cards total. 6 of those cards are rare or legendary or higher. And those rares or legendaries, if they are bombs, can really help you out. But you're never guaranteed to draw the card you want or need. So you really have to just make it the best with the cards you do get. And there are some strategies in set 3 that are prevalent and tend to work well. We see a lot of Wild Ruby as a strategy, a lot of Blood Ruby, a lot of Diamond Ruby, Ruby does play a significant part in a lot of the top tier decks, but then there's also combinations like Sapphire Blood, that's really popular. The spiders and the RNG elements. So you can make a lot of different decks out of a pool, and part of the strength of top tier players is finding out what they have to work with and how they can best make the deck.
All right. I wanted to make sure the video has just started for me. Has it also started for you, Nico?
Yes, it has. I'm watching the coin flip.
All right, perfect. So I don't know if we're exactly in sync, but hopefully it will not ruin the play-by-play. As Nico mentioned earlier, this is going to be with two of the most popular players in Hex. It is going to be Dinotropia versus Nicosharp, and the first thing, or sorry, Dinotropia versus Infamous Neo. And the first thing that we're going to notice right off the bat are the two champions that the heroes have selected. What can you tell us about the champions?
So Dinotropia is playing a more late game champion, Alessandra, and she is able to make Gigantosaurs. It's a 5 charge, and when she activates it, she gets a 7 cost Gigantosaur in her hand, which is a 7/7 vanilla troop. Infamous Neo is playing Bryson, and Bryson allows you to put a charge on a troop when you have more troops in play that gives them +1/+1 at first strike. So it's a really aggressive champion. So they're playing. It's basically an aggro deck against a late game deck.
Yeah, it's very interesting what we're seeing here. And one of the things that I want to mention is the pace of the game. I know a lot of things are already happening on the field right now. Troops are dropping onto the field, and we're not going to be getting too much into that right now. But the reason why they're playing this quickly is they're actually trying to manage their clock time. Unlike some other online TCGs where you have 1 minute every single turn, you're trying to manage your 30-minute clock throughout this entire game. So you want to try and play as quickly as possible early on where you are not going to be forced to make that many decisions, while later on when you have a lot of decisions to make, you want to slow down your play and make sure that you actually manage your clock well. So that's one of the reasons why the players are playing this fast. Dinotropia choosing Alindra, that very, very late game card. I'm sure Infamous Neo knows that he needs to play early and play quickly. We're seeing a fiery indignation going down on the Lysiris right now, and this was an important play just because Dinotropia is trying to get to that magical 5 amount of mana in this game already.
Yeah, it was interesting to see him, Infamous Neo, choose Indignation. He wanted to slow down the ramp, and just like you said, that allowed him to prevent five, the 5 mana on turn, or 5 resources on turn. And it looks like Dinotropia, that was good play because he doesn't have a 5th shard. He had to sacrifice his Larch for that 5th shard.
Yeah, so that was important. He needed to get that additional shard. And 5, if you guys do not know in this particular set, 5 seems to be the magic number where ramp really starts to get going. There's a lot of big drops, Skyroot Dancer, a 3/5 Skyguard that comes into play, Steadfast, and things like that. 5 is the magic number that everyone knows. Also, Bryson, I wanted to mention as well, is a champion that's a little bit more difficult to use just because it's conditional. His particular hero power is you give any troop that you have +1/+1 and Swift Strike only if you have more troops than your opponent. So it is a bit of a risk, it is a bit of a gamble, and it does reveal a lot of information to your opponent the instant you play it or open up with it.
Yeah, and I think Neo was putting the power on his Alkalite because he also wants to make sure that he is baiting out any early removal he can, just to see if Dinotropia has tricks.
Yeah, playing those tricks, making sure that your opponent doesn't try to stop you, doesn't try to do any sort of early removal. Also, he does have the Awakener, so he can try and pull back that original troop earlier on, and that is going to be interesting to see as we now see him shift over Steadfast and now just dropping his entire hand very, very quickly here. I am interested in seeing how or what he does here. He can't really attack into this. That Grove Whisperer, that 5/6, so strong. I can't quite tell what shard it has. Can you tell what gem it has socketed?
Yeah, it looks like the Grove Whisperer is socketed with +1/+1. It typically would be a 4/5 with a any other gem, any other minor gem, but because it's a 5/6, I believe it's socketed with the +1/+1 wild gem.
Yeah, and that's one of the elements that is just so important in Hex by itself. You have the ability to customize your cards at any time. There's these gems that you can add into a specific card, and based on the shards that you have, it actually changes how that particular card plays. As we see that Grove Whisperer being a 5, normally I think it's a 3/4, then +1/+1 as you mentioned with the minor gem, and then that +1/+1 again. Personally, some players like the spell shield, some players like that +1/+1. With this ramp, I agree that the 5/6, you just want very, very big, beefy troops onto the field to try and make your opponent have to deal with just such a large character.
Correct. Now we see that Dinotropia is at 6 charges, so he can definitely get a Gigantosaur, and he has 7 open resources. So I'm thinking that he might end up going for that, and I think Neo is trying to threaten a superior board state to scare Dinotropia away from attacking, and Neo's probably looking for some kind of removal or control to get some damage through.
Yeah, and this is the first time that we've seen this game that it looks like Dinotropia actually has to make a decision. Now, we obviously can't see Dinotropia's hand. We don't know what he's thinking right now, but from the past couple of rounds, we've seen him play rather slowly, and now we see a Predator and Prey, a brilliant card. One of the removal 5-drop cards. It gives one of your troops +2/+2, and it allows for 2 characters to battle. Neo didn't have any sort of answer or any sort of response, unfortunately, sending that Acolyte to the graveyard.
Oh, Neo just drew a bomb. So how we were talking about rares a little bit earlier, and how sometimes getting a bomb can really help your deck, and the Houndmaster is a huge bomb. When played, it just generates advantage for every turn it stays in play, and you'll start to see that the little dogs from the Houndmaster start to pop out at the end of each turn.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I saw Bryson as the hero. How many Pyrosoul Summoners, how many Houndmasters did he get in his sealed? That Diamond Ruby combination, you really need to have a lot more characters out on the field. All right, and if you just need more characters out on the field for you to use it. So anytime you're able to generate another troop, that's going to give you the advantage there. And moving back now, we now also see a semi-bomb coming in from the guard, or the Chimera guard fallen, with a very, very strong ability, being able to add additional attack equal to his toughness, and also dropping the Gigantosaur at the same time and swinging in with this 9 points of damage. And it looks like it is just going to be a small chump block here, or no, it's going to be a 2-for-1 trade here. I believe the attack dog and the 3/3 right there, just an easy 2-for-1 trade. And the reason why he did not want to trade any of the additional 1/1s on the field was he does need that extra troop out on the field just in case he drops a shard here to give +1/+1 and first strike.
Yes, and you can see that Neo chose to trade and Dino chose to attack because Dino does see the pressure that this Houndmaster represents, and he's short on cards, so he likely does not have another removal. The Filcape that was just played also allows Neo to have a little bit control against the Chimera Guard Fallen if they choose to transfer that power onto one of the larger troops in play.
Yeah, being able to revert a card, that is something that is unique to Hex as well, because a card's state can change so often in a game. You have this ability called revert. Revert allows you to basically change a card back to how it originally was as it entered the game. So if there's any permanent buffs that were removed or permanent buffs that were added to a specific card, you can kind of play with that ability and make sure that it is gone from the game completely. We now once again see Dinotropia coming in, attacking and threatening with 12 damage here. And at this point, I think Neo is going to be forced to do a little bit of just chump blocking here. And he now needs to find an out. He needs to figure out a way to really deal with this here. Also, you can see him using the Filcape, blocking, taking out the Grove Whisperer. This is going to be a 2-for-1 trade, but he does also have that Awakener as well, and he is going to be able to pull that, I believe, the Awakener back. Nope, he decides to... Oh, wait, no, my math was incorrect there. All right, so it was just a 1-for-1 trade there, just in case there was... Actually, do you know why he blocked with the Filcape?
Yeah, so Neo made a mistake there, actually. He miscalculated the amount of health the Grove Whisperer had, and he should have thrown another 1/1 to block. So that was actually a small misplay in the blocking there. Otherwise, he could have just blocked the Filk Ape as a straight even chump. Yeah, so just a small misplay by Neo there.
Yeah, I was thinking that I wasn't doing the math. I was thinking, oh yeah, Neo's such an expert player. He isn't going to make that mistake, off by one error. But no, he does end up making that mistake as well. He is going to be able to drop the Awakener, pull an attack dog, and now he does have more troops than his opponent. And he's going to use that +1/+1 first strike ability back on that Houndmaster and allow him to continue to generate more and more troops. He's actually going to swing with it here. And
Yeah.
when he swings with it, I believe he starts getting guard dogs. Is that correct?
Yes, and it was actually very convenient that Neo was able to give the charge and attack there, knowing that Dino probably does not have removal. The guard dog is even more important in this trade-off battle here because it provides a 3/3 body on blocking,
Mm-hmm.
and that will prevent Dino from going in with his larger troops.
Yeah, and guard dog, if you forget about its specific ability, you could actually attack and all of a sudden lose additional characters, not thinking that, oh, there's only a one small little precious poodle that's sitting here on the field, and then all of a sudden it gets a little bit more defensive and shows its teeth, turning into a 3/3. So we'll see if that turns into any misplays later.
Yeah, and for common, that is a particularly powerful card that's pretty underrated, I would say.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to even say for a common. This is a card that Neo didn't have in his deck at the start of the game. Anytime you're
Set one
able to
card,
generate, yeah, anytime you can generate it, that is just awesome.
very much so. Yeah, so Neo is continuing to get free value. Every time that Dinotropia cannot attack, Neo's board state gets better and better. And until that Houndmaster is removed, he's just growing a superior board. I really don't see how Neo loses this particular game in this best of three series.
Yeah, well, short of a Pride's Fall or some sort of large removal, Predator and Prey that we saw earlier, there's no way for the Awakener to pull it back since it's already hit the field. Short of those two cards, I can't see any way that the Houndmaster isn't going to continue to generate more and more. Those attack dogs are going to get larger and larger and larger. I'm looking for a Cry or something to push all of that damage over the edge as we now see a Pride's Fall removing the Houndmaster, and that was a beautiful top deck, exactly what Dinotropia needed in order to try and stabilize Neo's board.
Yeah, that was great. That the Pride's Fall was a huge pickup there. The only other card that I see doing very good work for Dino here would be like a Staggering Blast.
Mm.
But if Neo had the same, it'd also be great for him. So Staggering Blast is one to look out for because Dino is splashing Ruby for some reason.
Yeah, and right now we actually see the Filk Ape and the Guard Dog blocking the Gigantosaur, and I think this was that what we mentioned earlier, Dinotropia forgetting that the Guard Dog had that +2/+2, and all of a sudden we're going to see a Filk Ape being traded for a Gigantosaur that actually may have been okay for Dinotropia just because he didn't want to keep the reversion back on the field. The Chimera Guard Fallen can now shift its ability to the Grove Whisperer or someone else and become an even bigger deal. But we see that Neo now picked up a Shard Ward, the ability to buy himself another turn if Dinotropia overcommits to any specific fight.
Yeah, that Shard Ward is huge, and that's a card that is very unexpected in set three
Yeah.
play, and when someone plays it, it can totally change the course of the game.
Yeah, for those of you guys who don't know what Shard Ward does, Shard Ward allows you to prevent all damage coming from one particular, essentially, shard or color. As you can see on Dinotropia's board, there is 3 diamond cards, the white cards off over here, and then 1 wild card. So depending on what gets thrown, what gets attacked, you can even see Neo, if he has to deal with the Grove Whisperer, blocking with everything and then shard warding for wild to be able to trade 1 shard ward for essentially the biggest bomb right now that Dinotropia has, since there is not a big threat of a Gigantosaur coming into play, at least for 2 turns.
Correct, yeah, and it looks like Dinotropia just got another shard, so he is pretty close to another Gigantosaur. Oh, and it looks like that shard ward might be getting used right now.
All right, I think I'm actually like 6 seconds behind you. So let's go ahead. I think, yeah, that's exactly where we're taking a look at right now. Let's take a look. Yeah, it is going to be a swing with the Grove Whisperer. And
Yes.
now it is going to be a gigantic block, as I mentioned earlier. Every attack dog, every unit on the field coming in for the block. And there now the shard ward should be used right before combat damage is going to be dealt. And this is one of the things that I like about Hex, the ability to respond or trap your opponent into making huge misplays. Losing that Grove Whisperer is going to remove so much board state that Dinotropia has had for so long with that one card.
And as you can see, Infamous Neo just drew a Martyr. A Martyr is another rare, and it's a huge bomb when you're playing an aggro style deck like this, because you can use it offensively or defensively. And I think Neo is doing a little calculations in his head right now to figure out whether or not he can swing for Fatal. That Martyr very well may be the game closer.
Yeah, I believe so. So for those of you guys who don't know what Martyr does, Martyr basically transforms one of your troops into, well, essentially a giant statue that gives all of your other troops +1/+1. As Nico mentioned, you can use it offensively or defensively. When you use it offensively, yes, you can remove a troop off of your opponent's board. That's great, but it does give +1/+1 to all of your opponent's troops. However, I think defensively is going to be the right move here. What we're going to see is Neo swinging with all of those troops. And then whatever is blocked, most likely one of those troops is just going to then be turned into a martyr, pumping through and then pushing through a lot of damage. I don't know where the guard fallen is gonna go ahead and try and block here, but I know Dinotropia is thinking this is a very aggressive board state. And there's only one card in hand, and Martyr being a rare is not a card that you are going to expect in sealed.
And that's Fatal. Wow. So he got it.
All right, so right now it looks like Neo is going to be having a 1-0 lead in this best of 3 series now. And we go into the reserve part of the game. Based off of what we've seen in both of these players' decks, what do you think is going to be added and removed overall?
That's a good question. In terms of what Dinotropia is playing, I would think we would see possibly, since he's playing Diamond, maybe some stinging ambushes if he has them, which is an uncommon, but it's able to do 1 damage to all attacking troops.
Mm-hmm.
Because Neo is playing a lot of 1 health troops that were shared in that first game. And in terms of what Neo is playing, he might try to switch up the deck a little bit to deal with larger troops if he has anything else. Like we can just see that he put an Inflict Doubt into his deck, which allows him to pacify any opposing troop if he has more troops in play, and that's the requirement to target an opposing troop.
Yeah, and with the type of deck that he's running, he should be able to add that particular card or play that particular card. The worst portion of this game is that sometimes you add a card to your deck and you're not able to play it, and it's just sitting in your hand, just clogging your hand, wishing, and you wish that it was something else that you could play on your opponent and try and control them a bit more. It looks like we're going to be going into game two right now, and since Dinotropia lost game number 1, he's going to have the option to play first or draw first, and I don't see him doing anything but playing first, right? At this particular point.
Yeah, against an aggressive deck, you definitely want to start dropping your shards before them.
All right, so that's going to be where we go there. With 2 shards in hand, I think that Neo is most likely going to be keeping this opening hand here. And we'll see what Dinotropia does here in just a moment. We see some new cards that we didn't see in the previous game. The Spirit Eagle being a very strong card in this matchup. And also, the Scrapyard Bruiser, normally you don't see it. But with the type of deck that Neo is running, I like the Bruiser as an additional card just because it's an additional body on the field and he decides to pitch it.
Yeah, that was interesting. I thought Neo would keep that hand as well, but judging by his hand and having so many 4 drops, you might have thought that discarding for a more aggressive curve would be helpful. He didn't get a more aggressive hand, but he does have more shards, so I think that's why he chose to keep the second hand.
Well, also, I rarely ever know of anyone trying to pitch their hand more than once, going down from 7 cards to 5, and that almost seems like that seems like suicide in just a limited format like this. You're just so behind. Every card matters so much at this point, as we now see a Sunseer prophesying, I believe, a life drain coming up, and we see, oh, a little bit of top deck luck there, dropping down at least a body, the acolyte right there, and at least we won't be seeing some free 2-1 swings early on in this game.
Yeah, Neo was very lucky to draw that Alkalite, and that should help him stabilize WoW. And I might be a little ahead of you, but I just saw Neo pick up a Pyre Soul on his turn 3, and that card, if it's not answered, will be huge for Neo, especially with such a lackluster hand with many shards.
Yeah, Pyre Soul Summoner, the other card that I mentioned back in game one. Whenever you see Diamond Ruby, you gotta imagine that your opponent has Pyre Soul Summoners. You gotta imagine that you gotta be aware of Hound Soul Masters as well. We're gonna be swinging with a 2-1 here. What he's doing is he's trying to make sure that his opponent doesn't have anything to deal with the Pyre Soul Summoner. Pyre Soul Summoner, if you do not know, it has a basic ability, which means it can only be used on your main phases, and you are able to generate additional troops out on the field. It is a little bit more active. You do have to spend mana for it, unlike the Houndmaster, but anytime you can generate an additional body over your opponent, that is going to put a little bit of scare into your opponent.
Yeah, Neo is having great top deck luck right now. And not only did he draw his Pirate Soul, but he also picked up the Houndmaster, which he has the resources for the following turn. So he's in a really good position from what we can see. Of course, we don't know what Dinotropia has in his hand.
Yeah, this is just absolutely looking like a monstrous curve. Neo, if you ever listen to this, I'm sorry we doubted you in pitching your hand. I do not. You hear the saying, you rather be lucky than good, and I gotta say right now, the luck is strong with Infamous Neo right here, getting his 2-drop, his another strong 2-drop, and now his Houndmaster ready for turn number 5.
Well, pardon the bad pun, but Neo did have Inflict Doubt in his hand when he mulled, so.
Uh, Yeah, well, he did give us a little bit of doubt there, and what do you think? What do you think Dino's thinking right about now? Normally, when you see your opponent pitch their hand, you kind of like shiver a little. You're like, okay, I got this. His hand wasn't that good, and now all of a sudden you're seeing bomb after bomb after bomb reach down onto the field.
Yeah, and I'm at the point now where Houndmaster is just being played, and at this point, I think Dinotropia is really hoping for some sort of removal, and I'm not really sure how he feels, but he is at that magic 5 point now, and he will probably start to feel a little bit more confident in his ability to stabilize, but needs to deal with two giant threats.
Yeah, definitely. So Dinotropia, as and Nico has the ability to predict the future. We're gonna see him go ahead and drop a shard here or grab a shard, and those other 4 cards are going to be very very large drops. That's what you have to expect from the Alindra deck at this point. So we now have 5 shards. I got to expect some sort of prominent 5-drop. There is that Grove Whisperer, a 5/6. And now it is going to slow things down just a little bit. The Houndmaster not going to be able to freely swing, but you do have to deal with that Phantom that's in the air. And now also the Implicit Doubt. There you go. That's the reason why I personally prefer the Spell Shield, being able to keep that 5/6 out on the board. Pyre Soul Summoner dropping down a Blaze Elemental. The action is coming in fast and furiously right now as we see 10 damage being pushed through on the board.
Yeah, Dinotropia dropping to 8, and he is looking at a very aggressive board state. Oh, and he looks like he just was able to play a Centaur healer, which bumps him up to 12, but he is only with 1 troop in play, looking at a very grim board state, and I'm not quite sure he will be able to survive.
Yeah, the only thing that I can think of right now is, the big dinosaur that happens to be in the current meta that you always have to be aware of, and I'm of course talking about the Crocosaur. When it enters play, it's able to battle 2 troops. I don't know if Dinotropia has it. Dinotropia does seem to have a large amount of affinity for well, for dinosaurs, but it looks like it may not matter as a martyr now being turned, and it looks like it's going to be a free swing. I can't tell how much damage that is. Is that going to be lethal? I do believe so. Oh, stinging ambush as the counter, stopping the 3-1, the 1-1, and it is going to buy Dinotropia another turn.
Yeah, that stinging ambush was huge. I don't know if it's gonna save him. Wow, Dinotropia might be able to survive another turn. It looks like I just witnessed him drop another Centaur healer, and he goes up to 8, but he's still staring down a superior board state and has not been able to deal with Neo's 2 bombs.
Yeah, those two bombs, the Pyrosoul Summoner, short of the Predator and Prey right now that we have yet to see. I don't know what he can really pull right now. The cards in hand seems to be less. No real way to revert back that Grove Whisperer. Are we gonna see another card being played? Perhaps maybe another. Are we doing another Phantom, or are we gonna do a Blaze Elemental? It looks like he's gonna be doing the Phantom just because he doesn't want to run into that 5/5 right there. And there, it looks like Neo is going to go ahead and trade not attacking here for another turn to try and stabilize his board state even further.
Yes, and Dinotropia now is at 6 resources. He has enough charges for a Gigantosaur, and it looks like he just played the 7th resource. So I see a Gigantosaur coming down on the field. It's an 8/8. So we may either see an all-in from Neo in the next 2 turns, or he might still be scared off by these huge troops on Dino's side.
Well, we know for a fact that Phantom is just going to continue to poke right here, and I think that's what Neo's going to do. I think Neo's going to be playing a little bit more conservatively here. He doesn't want to swing in with all of these units here. The Phantom, with the Phantoms on the board, he's going to be dealing 1 damage this turn, 2 damage the next, 3, and then at that point he should be able to just swing with everything to try and push through that last bit of damage. As we're still seeing Dinotropia drawing shards now, so we know he's up to 8. Those 2 cards are not shards. And oh, there's that Predator and Prey that we've been looking at for so long. There it goes ahead and takes it down. What is your thought on using the Grove Whisperer for that Predator and Prey?
I think that was fine. Yeah, he wasn't going to attack regardless, given the board state. However, I'm not sure that the Houndmaster was the correct target. I mean, he's just as difficult to deal with as a Pyrosoul at this point in terms of the late game effectiveness.
Yeah, at that point, you can't deal with the Phantoms. It's the 1/1 flyers. You can deal with those attack dogs that seem to be just running around that 3/3 damage. Either way, it seems to be between a rock and a hard place right now. Dinotropia, even with one dinosaur on his side of the field, doesn't seem to be able to handle the amount of dogs and ghosts that seems to be hunting him.
Yes, and it looks like Dinotropia is deciding to attack with a Gigantosaur, realizing that he needs to put pressure on before he loses. Unfortunately for Dino, though, he is walking into the Shard Ward trap again, and that Gigantosaur looks like it will die.
Yeah, that 8 damage, all of that damage is going to be prevented, and losing that Gigantosaur. And I think Dinotropia's answers are pretty much gone at this point. Even if he had a Crocosaur, oh no, he drops a 5/7 here, but I can't do the math fast enough. But I do believe this is going to be lethal here.
Yeah, I believe so as well. 2 Blaze Elementals, it looks like will be Neo's train of thought here. He even has a charge power if he chooses to use it, and he can just go face. And I don't see Dino having a 2 cost answer to this particular board state. Looks like Neo is going to take this set.
Yeah, the short of another stinging ambush. Yeah, short of another stinging ambush, I don't see any way that this can really be answered here at all. Let's see, attack dogs coming in. There you go. There's a 3/3 attack dog. Are we going to see the GG come in, or what's going to be happening? There's the block. There is the rest of the damage there. And I believe Infamous Neo will 2-0 Dinotropia in this best of 3 series. And, hats off to Infamous Neo right there.
Yeah, that was an interesting game, and Neo has a pretty solid sealed deck going there with the Pyrosoul Summoner, the Martyr, and the Houndmaster. And I think that he will be able to do pretty well with that deck throughout this entire sealed tournament, is based on those bombs he was able to build into a Bryson deck.
Yeah, if for those of you guys, I don't know if I'm gonna spoil the rest of the information, but Neo actually goes. I believe he goes on to win this one, right?
I believe he does, yes,
Yeah,
and he gets first place out of the top 8. So congrats to Neo.
yeah. So Neo goes on to go undefeated, I believe, in the 9 rounds that this tournament was, and then goes on to be top 8 or top 1 in the final top 8, and taking or solidifying his seat in the Invitational. So he was the first person to go ahead and make it to the end there. What do you think Dinotropia was looking for, or do you think Dinotropia had any outs short of a Crocosaur?
I think a Crocosaur would have helped Dinotropia a lot. I'm not quite sure what type of bombs Dinotropia had in his deck because we didn't really get to see many. So unfortunately for Dinotropia, he might have just been on the unluckier side of the fence there because either he wasn't drawing his bombs or the um, the cards in his deck just weren't up to par against such an aggressive curve that Neo represented.
Yeah, that curve was really strong. I would actually want to see that deck a little bit further. Whether true Power Soul Summoners, I believe there's only one Houndmaster in that deck. I didn't get to see the reserves all that much, but it really felt like Neo just drew everything that he needed in that second game, even after that mulligan right there. So hats off to Neo. Anything you want to add into this particular game?
Yeah, I'll just say that the sealed gameplay does have a lot to do with how you top deck. So there is a definite luck factor there. So there's no way that we can disrespect Anatropia for his plays or the deck he had. He may just not have been able to draw as well, and it seems like Neo was able to get his threats in play when he needed them, and that ultimately is what decided the game.
Yeah, in sealed, I will not discount the bit of luck that is required in sealed, but then again, in any card game where there is that random chance, luck is always good to be on your side. If you want that element of luck there. If you want a game that you want to predict and no curveballs at you, then chess is your game. But I think the reason why we like trading card games in general is that you don't know that next card you draw. You don't know if that next card you draw is going to be that one card you need out of the 25 remaining cards that is going to help you win this game, or that anticipation. So once again, hats off to Infamous Neo. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And from me and Nico, we hope to see you guys online.
Thanks everyone. Take care.